Europe carved Africa into pieces with rulers and red ink. But one country refused to be a line on someone else's map. And when an empire came to claim it, it didn't meet surrender. It met a mountain. Picture the Horn of Africa at dawn. Highland air, thin, cold, clean enough to taste. The land rises like a fortress built by nature itself, layer after layer of basalt plateaus, sharp ridgelines, deep valleys that swallow roads and hide entire towns. Mist drifts over terraced fields. Oxen move slow, bells soft in the distance. Church chants carry through the morning like smoke, old hymns in stone churches carved into the earth. The sun breaks through, and the rock turns copper, then gold. Shadows stretch long across the hills, like history reaching for the present. Now, shift the camera down from the highlands toward the low country. The heat climbs, the horizon flattens. Trade routes run like veins, salt, coffee, leather, incense, stories. This is not an isolated world. This is a world that has survived by knowing exactly when to open its gates and exactly when to close them. And then, in the late 1800s, the air changes. Across the sea, Europe is restless. Steamships, telegraph wires, rifles stamped from factories. A new hunger dressed up as destiny. They called it civilization. But it sounded like boots on foreign soil. In Africa, borders appear overnight, on paper first, then in bloodless signatures, then in chains. Flags rise where no one asked them to rise. And the continent, ancient and vast, is treated like an empty stage. But here on these cliffs and high plains, there is already a kingdom with memory, a state with diplomats, a faith with roots older than many European nations, a people who do not think of themselves as waiting to be discovered. This is Ethiopia, Abyssinia, as foreigners often called it. And Europe is about to learn the difference between unclaimed and unconquered. In the heart of the highlands, a leader studies the world like a battlefield. Not just the battlefield of spears and horses, but the battlefield of treaties, languages, and lies. His name is Menelik, and he understands something brutal and modern. To survive the new century, Ethiopia cannot only be brave, it must be strategic. So he builds, he negotiates, he modernizes where it matters. He strengthens supply lines and communication. He acquires weapons, because courage without steel becomes a story told at someone else's funeral. But this is not only Menelik's story. There is also Taytu, Betul, Empress Taytu. Sharp-eyed, proud, unmovable, she hears the tone behind European diplomacy. She recognizes the smile that hides ownership. And when others consider compromise, she asks the question that burns through every polite meeting. What does this treaty cost us? In villages, the decisions feel distant until they don't. A farmer hears the word Italy for the first time. It means nothing, then. It means soldiers. Then, it means taxes paid to a foreign tongue. Then, it means your son is forced into labor on roads that lead away from your home. So people begin to listen. In markets, in churches, in campfires at night, a message spreads. Not a slogan, a simple truth. If the foreigners take the land, they take the future. And something extraordinary happens. Ethiopia is not a single uniform tribe, not a single language, not a single easy identity. It is a mosaic, and mosaics can crack under pressure. But the threat is so clear that the pieces lock together. Nobles bring their fighters, farmers bring grain. Blacksmiths work late into the night. Messengers run until their feet split. Priests pray, mothers pack food. Elders speak to the young with a seriousness that sounds like goodbye. Across the hills, you can feel it building, not panic, but resolve. This is the human weight of resistance, not just national pride. It's the quiet terror of losing your name, losing your language, losing your right to exist without permission. And at the edge of this rising storm, Italy watches. Italy is late to the scramble for Africa, late to empire, late to the feast, and that makes it impatient. Italian officers look at Ethiopia and see a prize, a headline, a shortcut to prestige. They do not see the terrain. They do not see the unity hardening in the highlands. They do not see the difference between a colony and a country. They only see a map, and they believe the map is reality. Here is the twist. The war that proves Ethiopia cannot be colonized does not begin with a cannon. It begins with ink. In 1889, Ethiopia and Italy sign a treaty known as the Treaty of Wuchale. Two versions exist, two languages, two meanings. In the Italian version, Ethiopia is described as a protectorate forced to conduct foreign affairs through Italy, a diplomatic leash hidden inside legal wording. In the Amharic version, the meaning is different. Ethiopia may use Italy's help in foreign relations. May, not must, one word becomes a weapon. Italy takes its version to Europe and announces victory without firing a shot. They present Ethiopia as if it has already been tamed, as if sovereignty can be stolen quietly, like a wallet in a crowded street. But Ethiopia refuses to be robbed in silence. Menelik and Taytu see the trap. They reject the claim. They refuse to be translated into a prison. And Italy, exposed, does what empires often do when they're caught lying. It doubles down. Troops move inland, columns advance, supply lines stretch thin. And then comes the moment that shifts the entire continent's psychological map. March 1896, the Battle of Adwa. If you could film it from above, it would look like waves colliding in a mountain bowl. Ethiopian forces, tens of thousands, moving with purpose through familiar highland paths. Italian units, modern rifles, artillery, crisp uniforms, trying to force a European-style campaign onto African terrain. But the mountains do not cooperate. Italian forces are split. They misread the landscape. They underestimate the speed and coordination of Ethiopian troops. They assume that numbers do not matter when you have superior technology. They are wrong, and the result is not a narrow escape. It is not a heroic defeat that still serves the empire's myth. It is a clear, undeniable, humiliating loss. Italy is defeated by an African army, not in a distant skirmish, not in a negotiated stalemate, in a decisive battle. Adwa becomes a thunderclap across the world, because the surprise is not only military, the surprise is psychological. Europe built a story about itself, that its domination was inevitable, that its conquest was proof of superiority. Adwa shatters that story. And here is the deeper discovery. The victory's impact travels farther than Ethiopia's borders. In places where Black people lived under colonial rule and racial violence, in the Caribbean, in the Americas, across Africa, Ethiopia becomes more than a country. It becomes a symbol of possibility, a signal flare in a dark sky. People whisper its name like prayer, not because they think Ethiopia is perfect, but because it proves something the world tried to erase. Europe can be resisted. And Ethiopia's flag colors green, yellow, red begin to echo in the future. They will show up again and again in the flags of newly independent African nations. a quiet tribute to the country that held the line when the line looked impossible to hold. Now, history stays honest. Ethiopia's story is not a simple fairy tale. Decades later, in 1935, fascist Italy returns under Mussolini. This time with airplanes, poison gas, and modern terror, Ethiopia is occupied for several years. But even then, the colonization does not fully settle into permanence. Resistance continues, the world's attention shifts. And in 1941, Ethiopia's independence is restored. So when people say the African country Europe couldn't colonize, they're speaking to a larger truth. Ethiopia could be invaded, it could be hurt, but it could not be permanently absorbed into someone else's empire as a finished project. It was never a blank page. It was a book that refused to be rewritten. And maybe that is the real reason Ethiopia frightened empires, because it didn't just defend land. It defended the idea that a people can stand inside history, not as victims waiting to be claimed, but as authors who choose their own ending. If you want more cinematic, true stories where history fights back, follow the channel and tell me which moment of resistance we should film next.